Are we going to get the black box of the abyss, or is it actually going to transition?
Well, I know Twitch was down that night for a while.
Yeah, that's why we didn't do any video, and we are live after all. Imagine that. Okay, perfect. All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things Overwatch. I am your host, Emily Drunk, and tonight on episode 153, we'll be discussing the latest in Overwatch esports, see what's buzzing in this week's hot community topics, break down the Overwatch League Stage 1 playoffs, and reflect on Stage 1 as a whole. But before we can get into the news and introduce you to my co-host, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course to thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Edward Ed. We are entering the dark age of a week without Overwatch League. But despite that, we have a ton to talk about here tonight. But how has this past week been treating you?
Well, it's been amazing, actually. Like, when you think about it, we had Overwatch League Stage 1 Finals and semifinals. We had the Overwatch Stage 1 Finals and quarterfinals. The semifinals were not really the semifinals. Those were kind of just throwaway games. But we got to watch them on ABC, so hopefully you were able to tune into that. So we had all of that. We get the nice break. We had March Madness. Baseball starts tomorrow. Brewers play the despicable Cubs. Not Cubs, Cardinals tomorrow. So they suck. And you know, it's you get that nice little week break in between, where you can be like, okay, what am I going to do Thursday night? I don't have Overwatch League to do. I'm going to catch up on errands, or more than likely, I'm going to play some video games, and so on and so forth. So it's been a really good week. You, though, have had a crazy week. How's your week been?
Tiring. I mean, between being sick, attending C2, E2, it's been pretty good. I went to C2, E2 on Sunday for the first time, and one day was definitely not enough. I honestly probably could have spent just the entire day in the artist alley. But they had Lucy Pohl there, so I got to meet the voice actor from Mercy. Carolina Ravassa was there. Somber Lucy Hale was there. So we did like a group photo op for the Overwatch voice actors, which was a good time. My nephew got his first lightsaber, like one of the nicer ones too. So he like upgraded like the blade, so it's not gonna break. He did not go for the sound, primarily just due to the fact that the batteries drain so much quicker when you get the ones with the sound.
And you can make the sound on your own.
Yeah,
I mean that's what I do. Like, no. Right.
Yeah, but this was like his first major convention, because the only other convention he's gone to was Days of the Dead back in November to go meet Lita and Trish Stratus when they were at that convention. But outside of that, like, there was no other reason for him to be there, just because, that's a scary movie convention. So he's been really getting into comics. So this was like very like massive to him. So he had an absolute blast, and it was hilarious just seeing him interact with all the different people dressed up from Star Wars, whether it was just fellow Jedis or the Darth Vaders that were there, or stormtroopers. There were a couple of times where there were some stormtroopers and like they would see Anthony and they would like run off. Or there was one moment where Darth Vader saw him, stopped dead in his tracks, and he was just staring him down. So they had a lightsaber duel, and I'm just like, aim for the legs! And then he ended up winning
Get the high ground. Get the high ground. Oh, sand in his eyes.
But it was a really, really good time. It was an exhausting day, a lot of walking around. Buying the insoles was definitely a smart decision on my part, because walking around so much on the hard concrete at the McCormick place was definitely pretty rough. But I had a blast, and I didn't buy as much as I was expecting to, just because I didn't have that much room to carry stuff. But I did pick up a couple of things here and there. But across the board, it's been a solid week. And just like I'm like, what am I doing this like tonight, tomorrow? There's no Overwatch League out. I was like, well, I mean, I guess I could catch up on contenders, but it's just like, there's too many regions. I don't even know where I would even begin.
Exactly. And like watching one match is like, okay, I learned nothing.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically like, well, maybe I'll just watch the couple of Runaway series that I know that I've missed and just call it a day at that point. I don't know. But what I do know is we have had a lot going on this past week, despite, Overwatch League Stage 1 wrapping up. We have, a new patch on the PTR. We got some new merchandise hitting the stores. We got a little bit of esports drama, as per usual. We have old men yelling at clouds because of esports being on national television. All of that good stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into the news. So first up, we do have a new patch that was deployed onto the public test realm on March 25th. This is a patch bringing additional hero updates to the game involving Junkrat, Reaper, and Symmetra. So for Junkrat, they're looking at the frag launcher. So the projectile speed has been increased from 20 to 25. Then the grenades are now going to bounce less, but explode sooner. For Reaper, they made a number of changes to Shadow Step after all of this time, because, we constantly rag on this ability being completely useless. So what is Shadow Step going to be now? Well, you can use a Shadow Step in the air. Time to exit Shadow Step was reduced from 1 second to 0.5 seconds. You are now invisible the entire time it takes to exit Shadow Step. You can now teleport onto surfaces that would usually break, like railings. And then for Symmetra, this is primarily dealing with the teleporter, very similar to all the Shadow Step thing I just mentioned, and that is that railings and other breakable objects no longer block teleporter placement and teleporting. So I have to say, like, Junkrat's been seeing a number of changes. It seems like this is going to be a lot less, hey, random kills with, like, lob shots. You're not going to be able to bounce it off of as many walls or just bounce it in general. It seems to be like one bounce and then it explodes at that point. But Junkrat has been seeing a bit more play than what we've been used to seeing. Then Reaper, after all of this time, maybe Shadow Step won't be completely useless. I don't know. We'll have to do some more testing. And I know Spider has been posting some stuff on the Shadow Step changes already. But what are your thoughts on these balance changes that we got?
Well, all right. So the Junkrat one, I really like because it is a buff. It obviously, projectile speed was increased from 20 to 25, but they did specifically mention that they did not change the arc of the projectile. So the way you aim now is the way you're gonna aim. It's just they increase the speed of it, so you don't have to worry about any of that. And yes, like you said, it's gonna reduce the Junkrat spam. So this is a buff to higher skill while being a nerf to lower level. Like you're talking silver, gold, and below. Like this is a nerf to Junkrat because honestly, Junkrats at gold and below, you just get Junkrats that just spam. They just spam, 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 spam. Well, they can't spam as effective. That's a nerf. So I like the changes to Junkrat. Hopefully we get to see him more because honestly, he's a fairly skilled hero to play for one reason only. And that is getting to know the arcs and the trajectories. You need to know the trajectories and the arcs better on Junkrat than you do any other character. But he's not completely useless if you don't know it. That's like, so that will be nice. The Reaper changes, all right. The Shadow Step can now be used in air. Shut up. Like, I'm sorry. That's just, all right, fine, dandy. You get booped off to a ledge. If you have quick enough reflexes, you can maybe survive. Maybe. But I'd say more often than not, a Reaper's gonna try and get fancy with something and die. Like, more often than not, that's how it's gonna be. Like, where I can see this kind of coming into play a little bit from like a high end from an OWL perspective is, I don't know if you remember on God, why am I drawing a blank on the map? where Winston's lab is. Watch Point Gibraltar. If you remember when Pine flanked behind on Widowmaker, like, you could now possibly get back there with Reaper, who is way more effective sneaking up behind than probably a Widowmaker will be. So you could get some cheeky flanks like that. So that's pretty cool. The time to exit Shadow Step reduced from 1 to 0.5 of a second, and invisible for the entire time it takes for him to exit Shadow Step. They're nice changes, but it doesn't get the main problem with Reaper out of there is he has no range. Like, you're not going to go and try and 1v1 a Widowmaker or a Hanzo in the back line because of these changes. You'll still get melted. You just don't have range. Like, you don't have closing speed. And to me, that is iffy. It could make for some good Reaper ults, though, and the like teleporting right into the middle of or shadow stepping right into the middle of a pack and ulting because they can't target you. And if you time it right, you can just ult before they can kill you and stuff like that. But I still don't see him being viable like this until he gets something more range or there's less stuns in the game. Like, so, and the teleport one, the symmetric teleport one, that's just a quality of life change. So, I don't know. What do you think of these changes?
I mean, for Reaper, it's probably going to eliminate the chances of you actually using Shadow Step and then just getting sniped immediately, since you're going to be invisible the entire time. So you're not going to be able to line up that shot as soon as you hear him yell across the map, basically. So there is that going for it. But at the end of the day, the close and the distance has always been the biggest issue with the Reaper. And until they give him something like where, I don't know, he just throws his shotgun across the map after he uses the entire clip rather than just throwing it on the ground. So he has some sort of range attack, you know, you're not going to be able to close that distance. And, you know, the Junkrat stuff, you know, it's interesting because Junkrat's always kind of been one of those characters that seems to be more viable when it comes to the lower competitive ladder. So maybe this is going to help balance it out where he's not necessarily going to be guaranteed to be like the top damage dealer at that sort of level. So I'm okay with that. So at the end of the day, though, you know, whenever we talk about Junkrat, everyone's going to talk about, well, like, oh, well, Jake's going to be meta again. And I'm like, well, they're just trying to make sure Jake keeps a job because without Junkrat, what's he going to be doing?
Jake will never be meta.
Yell it louder for the people in the back, please. But moving on, we do have a new update on the endorsement system, kind of. So during the 2019 Game Developers Conference, we had one of the Blizzard research developers, Natasha Miller, sitting down to discuss the endorsement system. And I'll be honest, part of me was very cynical when I saw this, primarily because they're like, yeah, well, we've seen like a 40% reduction in matches with negative encounters. But the only thing I could think of was like, well, yeah, we're seeing like 40% less games overall just because of the meta and people moving to play other games. So it's really hard to be like, oh man, look at how amazing this system is. But I did want to touch up on one of the quotes from this, because the way that it was worded, I was like, no one actually sees it this way or has ever labeled it this way. So Natasha says that if you're not consistently getting endorsements, if you slip up, you're not going to get endorsements and your level is going to slip. This often causes players to want to get that level back and keep going, which offers a path to redemption. What? I've never been like, oh crap, I slipped from endorsement level 2 to level 1. Oh, I better be extra good this next game so I can try to earn that back so I can get whatever small reward it's going to be. No one actually does that. It's just, it was one of those things that I just laughed at, you know?
So what you're saying is the LA Valiant have been super toxic and they need to really work on their endorsements to get their offer a path of redemption for stage 2.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a joke. It is like that quote is kind of a joke. Because I mean, I don't know about you. When I give out endorsements, which is probably only 50% of the time, and you should give out endorsements whenever you can because you get experience for doing it too. But I usually give it to the healers and the tanks. Like, now I will say
that's because there's no DPS in the game.
Try playing where I'm at. It's all DPS. So the one tank and the one healer automatically get the endorsement. But I will say this, once they introduced it, even when they first introduced it, I noticed the amount of toxicity went down. Like, all joking aside, this was a good way to reduce toxicity. And let's be clear what we think toxicity is. Toxicity is not somebody one tricky, or they're not playing well enough on tank or something like that. Like, that is not toxicity. Toxicity is abusive chat, purposely throwing, being rude, stuff like that. That is what toxicity is. A one trick is not. So yeah, it's definitely helped. I would not, though, go out and say quotes like this. Because, I mean, yeah, just don't say quotes like that. But it's nice to know. And, yeah, like, the 40% reduction in matches with negative counters, to me, that doesn't scream, this is working. Like you said, it screams to me, they have a lot less people playing. Like, less people playing, less people being toxic. So, you know. So, yeah, I mean, it's good, but it's one of those stats that will is skewed to make the company look better. So, but keep it going. Endorse.
Absolutely. Well, moving on, we also have some new merchandise that hit the Gear Store earlier this week, and a lot of this is kind of revolving around hero icons in particular. But there are a couple of new things that are pretty cool on the Blizzard Gear Store that I found when I was looking through there. So first up, we have Incredibuilds, which are wood models of characters. Right now, there are only 2 in the Gear Store. They have one for Reinhardt and one for Winston. Those are $22. We also got some new jackets. I know they have a new Ash hoodie for $45. Same with the Overwatch logo fleece. And then for the icon gear, there's a lot of stuff here. They got like notebooks, lanyards, cinch bags, tumblers, bottles, mouse pads, towels. You know, they got the works pretty much across the board. And this is, you know, coming after the whole Pachimari push that they did for March. That was, I think, sometime last week too. So there's a bunch of new patchy gear as well. So it seems like more and more we see additional stuff being added to already existing lines or just expanding on what we already offer. But just taking a look at some of the new stuff, is there anything that maybe you have your eye on at this point?
I mean, the Overwatch icon stuff is a little too, like, distracting when I look at it. For me, personally, so I don't think I'd do any of that. The fleece bomber jacket is something I like. The Overwatch candle set is actually something I would like. And then I was looking at the Overwatch sheets, logo sheets for your bed, but it's only twin and full size beds. I'm like, well, never mind. I have zero interest in the wood models. Because when I looked at Winston's one, I was scarred a little. His flat base in the front it does me in. Like, it's the thing of nightmares. Like, you want to punch him in the face and run in the opposite direction when you see that. So, I don't know. I might get some of this. It all depends on, yeah, that fleece bomber jacket is pretty awesome. Not going to lie. So, but I'm coming up on summer. I'm not wearing a fleece bomber jacket in the summer. But, you know, who knows what I'll buy. I'll have a few drinks and I'll get on the website and start ordering things like I always do, and then I'll get in trouble, and then I'll regret it the next morning. But then by the next night, I'm like, you know what? I'm fine. I'm just going to enjoy the stuff that comes in.
Yeah, I know if I buy anything, it's probably going to be the Ash hoodie, just to add another Overwatch hoodie to my collection, which I already have far too many, but this one is Ash, and, we can all be Deadlock Game members, so there is that. So, yeah, definitely go check that stuff out. Ton of new gear hitting the store. But let's go ahead and jump into this week's Hot Community topic. So, first up, there's been a lot of talk surrounding a particular Contenders China team, as well as one of the Overwatch League expansion teams, that being Lucky Future and Toronto Defiant, respectively. So I'll be honest, there's a lot to kind of digest here. So basically what's going on is you have the Toronto Defiant being accused of fraudulent conduct over a contract of one of Lucky Future's players who was set to join the Toronto Defiant, that player being none other than Lucid. So Lucky Future, they took to Weibo, or Weibo. I don't know how you actually pronounce it. It looks like Weibo, but it's like the Chinese social media. So they basically outright accuse Blizzard of mismanagement of Contenders China, as well as the sale of Overwatch League slots. So Lucky Future is basically claiming that the senior manager for Overwatch League in China and the head admin for Contenders China acted unfavorably towards other teams during the Contenders China 2018 seasons and left orgs in the dark over managerial decisions. So a lot of this is kind of stemming around anti-poaching rules. So you had a staff member of LGD approaching Gary privately about a trade after LGD had secured an Overwatch League Academy partnership. But it turns out, LGD doesn't operate an Academy team for any of the Overwatch League teams, so the trade was actually fraudulent. But Gary now plays for the Chengdu Hunters. But it just seems like there was another moment where one of the Lucky Future players discovered that someone was account sharing and boosting on their team, so they terminated the contract, and then that player never got suspended by Contenders for that, which they normally would, and then that player ended up getting picked up just a couple of days later by Hero, Takatur, and Panther. So they were just eligible to play just right out of the gate when they should have really been suspended either a couple of games or through the rest of the season, like we have seen time and time again in Contenders China, because that has been a very big issue in that region here lately. But it seems like a lot of these allegations are just revolving around withheld information when it comes to Lucky Future, where they didn't know team rosters, schedules, things like that. And then you had Lucid's contract being invalid due to Toronto not actually signing the contract, which led to Lucid not finding a team for Contenders China Season 2, and ended up retiring. And there's been a couple of other updates I know from Benchmob that kind of shed some different light in it, but it just seems to be every time I look at this story as it develops, more and more things start layering on top of one another. And of course, there's a lot of translation going on because of, it all being in Chinese. But it's just been an absolute crap show. Just seeing things add up. And it seems like there are definitely faults on both sides, whether it's Toronto Defiant, Overwatch League management, and really Lucky Future as well, based on some of the recent developments.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Lucky Future is more of a... They're mad at the situation because they probably didn't know the actual rules. They didn't know what was going on or what they could do, what they couldn't do, and then are just mad from the result of it. And they're lashing out. Now, Lucky Future also had been accused of trying to hide from Overwatch League teams, that wanted to sign the whole roster. That part of their roster had signed with another Overwatch League team. So they're trying to sell the team to an Overwatch League team, the whole team, knowing that two of the players had already signed with other Overwatch League teams. So there's just massive confusion around everything. I mean, honestly, I don't consider this a black eye for Blizzard. I don't consider it a black eye for the Toronto Defiant. I think it looks the worst for Lucky Future because right now they just look like they're whining, and it only hurts them in the future because what future organization is going to want to deal with them? You know, let's say there's another China team that comes about in 2 years when they possibly expand Overwatch League. Are they going to want to deal with them knowing that they're, you know, shady people? Yes, Toronto Defiant probably could have handled it better, but, you know, they did what they thought was best. The Blizzard employees, like blaming individual Blizzard employees, I think is where I turned against Lucky Future. Because, I mean, anyone who's worked in any form of an office knows, okay, unless you're dealing with the head honcho directly, the person you're dealing with has to wait, has to talk to other people, has to go through other people, can't make decisions on their own. So they're blaming these people, but they probably have zero to do with it. They're just the middleman between the Contenders team and Blizzard HQ. So, yeah, don't throw individuals like that under the bus. I see a lot of this has just kind of been swept under the rug, and it's kind of going away at this point, which I think is best all around. And hopefully the players for Lucky Future find somewhere else to play because you're not going to move forward that well with Lucky Future, especially, you know, when people may not even want to deal with trying to acquire individual players from that team. So it's an interesting situation, but like we've talked previously, Contenders China as a whole is just a shit show right now, with permanent lifetime bans being thrown out. You know, like it's just horrible right now. It's Contenders China is bad. So nothing surprises me out of there.
Yeah, and you know, I will note one other thing on this is the fact that unlike some other Contender teams, at least after this implode, like this owner basically outright was like calling people out. At least the organization didn't implode immediately, kind of like with Toronto Esports. So they have that at least. But I definitely feel like it's going to hurt the chances of the players to find a new home or get picked up during the mid-season for the Overwatch League, just due to the amount of drama, kind of like behind the scenes with this team in particular. But at the end of the day, you know, the organization was just wanting to try to find, you know, the same home for all of their players. And yes, they acted pretty shady with how it was getting done, but you can look at the history of the Overwatch League and how the signings have been done, and chances are, if you're an entire team, you're not getting picked up for the same roster. That very rarely happens, and it's usually just in special cases.
Yeah, Runaway was I believe the only one this last time.
Right. Yeah, it's just the fact that Lucky Future basically had dominated Contenders China that year. So they were definitely kind of like at the top of their region, but we haven't seen a China team go wholesale to the Overwatch League. It's mostly just been components or like maybe 3-4 members at the most of a core roster, and just build in around that. But moving on, you know, we had the Overwatch League Stage 1 playoffs on ABC, which was fantastic. So we got another televised esports event, another day of just outright outrage by the general public when I saw this. So we had a lot of people decrying that esports was airing on TV. Big shocker there. It happens time and time again. And, you know, I can somewhat understand the angle of, you know, it's March Madness, right? There's college basketball all on TV right now. It was even during these times, basically. So, you know, if you were flipping to ABC, maybe you were expecting to see, you know, another game being televised. And to that point, yes, there was another game being televised. It was just Overwatch. But it's always entertaining to just browse social media every time that there's an esports event on TV. I'm sure you get a good kick out of it too, because some of them are very laughable offenses. Some of them even become great copy pastas for our esports viewers.
Me and all my investments.
Yeah. Yeah, you and your 4 bathroom houses. But I have to say, and the thing that I loved about this more so than every other instance that this has happened was the fact that we got to see the other side of the coin, right? Because during the ABC broadcast, there was a certain political issue that kind of cut into the Overwatch League broadcast. And then you saw the esports fans being like, ugh, really? Like, they're going to be showing, like, the Mueller report over the Overwatch League? So we got to see it from both sides of the fence, which we never get to see. Normally it's just us kind of, like, having a light chuckle over the old man yelling at the clouds and, the future being now old man type deal that we see time and time again. So it was very intriguing to see the outrage from our side for a change.
Yeah, it was interesting to, see ABC. I mean, obviously I get why ABC chimed in, like, hey, this happened after 2 years of waiting. We should probably report on this. So I get why ABC chimed in. I'm not upset about that. But man, some of these, I actually expected more hate than what we got. And the reason I think we got less hate than what I expected was because the NCAA tournament was on. So there's less people flipping between channels. It's more like, all right, we have on Saturday, I think it was, Kentucky was playing on one channel, North Carolina was playing on another, some variation of that. No, it's North Carolina was on Saturday, Kentucky was on Sunday. So those are major games that people probably aren't flipping away from or flipping through to find another college basketball game. So we definitely got less of that, less hate, less national hate. So I'm talking the asshats over at like Colin Cowherd, like him and all his lackeys. Did not a peep from them the entire time. I honestly believe a lot of these national pundits, like Colin Cowherd, people like that, bosses came to them when we're like, shut up. Like, you do realize this is kind of the wave of the future. And we can't upset the fan base before it even becomes an actual thing. We're still waiting on ratings. I've been checking constantly to find the ratings, and any of the ratings from Saturday and Sunday are from 8 p.m.
Yeah, prime time.
And I'm like, no, I want daytime ABC ratings because I'm not expecting something massive. I'm expecting 1-2 million probably, and that's on the high end personally. So like, I just want to know what it came out to going up against March Madness. But yeah, it was awesome. I told everyone I knew, text my family, like, hey, if you guys want to know what I podcast about, turn to ABC. And my parents were like, but we're watching the Golf Channel, and then I lost them. Like, no, turn off the Golf Channel. So, but yeah, I loved it. I had Twitch up on my computer, but I sat on my couch watching it on ABC, and it was a thing of beauty.
Yeah, and if we had just one person just being introduced to esports that actually got into it, absolutely worth it at that point, because you're no matter what we do, there's always going to be a little bit of backlash just because of them just not used to seeing esports on TV or whatever they want to throw at video gaming being considered a sport. But there are always people who will become fans just because it was on ABC. So I was happy to see it get that. It's unfortunate that we were going up against March Madness in some retrospects, but at least it calmed down the normal amount of uproar that we're used to seeing. We'll see how that's going to play out, though, when we get to the All-Star game, which we'll get into here in just a little bit. But in other news, there were a lot of discussions going on in regards to two Overwatch League teams that have since dissipated. But I did want to bring this up just because it really kind of threw us for a loop. And that was that there were reports surfacing that Boston Uprising were in trade-in talks with the LA Valiant. So this deal would have sent Fusions over to the Valiant for KSF and Fate. This deal did end up falling through, but the fact that Boston was shopping Fusions around, to me, was really interesting because he's basically been the linchpin of this team. He's been their shot caller, and a lot of their team synergy was built around Fusions and his aggressiveness. So I want to kind of get your thoughts on the trade proposal and who you thought would have gotten the better end of the deal, and maybe just talking about potential trades that we could see or that we would like to see that could benefit different parties in the Overwatch League.
I mean, all right, so in that specific trade, I think the obvious thing is I think the Valiant would have gotten would have won that one because you get rid of Fate, who did not play that well. Stage 1, obviously, they didn't win a game. And then KSF, who gets off the team, and you don't have the KSF Custa drama, which I don't even get why that's flipping drama at this point. Why Custa is not starting, but that's beyond the point. It was interesting. I think they're trying to sell high on Fusions. And they could also see that maybe it's going to be a Winston meta, and Fusion's Winston is not good. Not good. It's not like you love him on Reinhardt, but you will not love him on Winston. So they're trying to sell high on my favorite character, and I don't know. There were rumors that it was more than just this, though. There are rumors something along the lines of the coaching staffs were switching up. Like, there are all sorts of things going around, and it's not dead yet, but it's possible. I think Fusions is on his way out. All right. As far as possible trades, I got 3. I got 2 legit ones, and then one outside the box, Ednar's offers rocker for the 40th time, trade. So the first one I'm going to say is I'm trading, if I'm the Boston Uprising, I am trading Fusions and asking from Uprising Academy to Paris Eternal for soon. The reason I'm doing that is this allows... All right, so I'm a big fan of asking. And I think they need solidarity. Paris needs solidarity in their DPS. And asking, they can get that solidarity right there. Fusion gives them a better tank over Ben Best because their tank line's trash. Soon comes in as... I'm not a Color Hex fan, but it gives Soon and Blase tandem DPS is something to build a team around. And Boston only has 2 DPS players on the entire team, so they need another DPS character. So when you have Soon and Blase and then Color Hex backing them up, that's a nice trio. So I like that trade. Another one is I think everyone expects Sleepy to be traded. I think he expects to be traded. Not as easy as you think, trying to find a team out there that needs a non-Korean flex support. And like going through everything, the one spot, and I'm sorry, Julian, I'm going Sleepy for Raucus straight up. And the reason I'm going is I look further and further into this. Raucus in stage 1 was trash. Like, bottom 5 in everything. In damage, healing, I believe he was bottom 5 in, well, technically top 5 in deaths. Like, overall, his flex support playing was outside of the top 20, really, per 10 minutes in the Overwatch League. Like, statistically, according to Omnic Meta, he was the 22nd ranked flex support player in Overwatch League for Stage 1. And as your starting flex support Zenyatta player, that's bad. That's real bad. Now, yes, he would go to San Francisco Shock and he would not start because you're not starting over Violet. You're not starting over Moth. But honestly, who cares? Like, neither one of the teams care. I think Sleepy would be an upgrade over Rockers for Houston. Give them more stability. So I like that trade. Now we get to my crazy trade. So this one is in 2 parts, and it all kind of revolves around the LA Valiant going full Korean. So for starters, Space and Agilities are getting traded in a 2-person trade with the Philadelphia Fusion for Sato and Carpe. Okay? Now, I know everyone's like, what are you doing? Fusion will be fine. They'll be fine. And then they go and trade Custa to the Charge for Chara. So they have a Korean main support to pair with Izayaki, and so on and so forth. That is the trade, the crazy trade. I mean, likelihood the Philadelphia Fusion get rid of Carpe, slim to none. Very slim to none. But, I mean, it's not like the Fusion... I mean, you have Snillo up there. You have EQO up there. Again, you still have, like, the best contenders team. Who are you at, I think, turns 18 at the end of Season 2? And you'll probably want to bring Who Are You up anyway. So, like, you have a plethora. Why not get the best off-tank in the game? Plus Agilities, who's not too shabby. And can fit into a mixed roster because they're coming from a mixed roster. And honestly, everything I hear about Carpe and being the reason Sato is in there is because Carpe refuses to play with Fraggy. Like, if that's actually true, you don't want someone like that on your team. You don't want that Mariah Carey diva player on your team who's demanding, I can't play with this person, I have to play with this person. Because that's when your team goes down the drain. So those are my crazy trades. I have a lot other crazy ones, but I'm not going to get into them. But how about you? What are some of the trades you think might occur?
Okay, so here's the one I was mentioning pre-show that is 9,000 IQ, right? So if you're the Dynasty, they just do a cash offer for Hureg. Hureg has been on 4 championship rosters, and that's a secret recipe for a Dynasty to actually win the stage. You just bench him, you don't play him, and you get that playoff bump just due to him being on the roster. So that one seems pretty obvious because the track record speaks for itself. Just looking back at, GC Busan, calling to Panthera, London Spitfire, Vancouver Titans, the works. He's almost unstoppable at this point. If I'm looking at other potential trades that I would like to see, Dynasty do need another hit scan player. I don't know who they try to seek. But I will say, like, if you look at some of these teams, I feel like for Washington, maybe they have some more budget to actually work with. So I would love to see them go out and try to pick up Crimso from Team Envy. Fraggy to Florida Mayhem, I feel like would be a pretty good fit, just so we could free him up. And, there's issues behind the scenes with Fusion, just as you mentioned. So I'd love to see Florida Mayhem try to bring on an additional tank, because their tank play has been pretty miss in regards to the main tank. And hopefully that will shore up that line a little bit, kind of like what they did bringing in McGravy to kind of trade time with Zephyr. Outside of that, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that will probably be looking at some of the NYXL DPS. My only concern with trades like that is what the buyout price would be on those contracts. I don't feel like any of the NYXL DPS, even if they are, map based or control based or whatever, I feel like the asking price is going to be really high to the point where it's going to shut the door on a lot of potential trades that we could see. But really, the Hureg one makes the most sense to me because, I mean, he's just been on all these championship winning teams. He's not actually playing, and then all of a sudden they win. So he just seems to be that special ingredient for success.
Now, you talked, all right, see, you went a different direction than me. You went with, like, just signing away players. I went straight up player for player. Do you see, all right, so you said Crimzo. I think we both agree Crimzo needs to probably be called up sooner or later. Trill. Do you think Trill gets called up? Or even Beast Halo? Because there are a lot of teams that need main tanks.
That's the thing too, because like Beast Halo was kind of in that purgatory that it kind of worries me if he's actually going to get picked up for the Overwatch League. A trade offer that I think would be viable for a lot of teams is looking at the LA Gladiators and trying to get Panker, because Panker is going to be another one of those players who is handcuffed right now and not going to be seeing a ton of playtime just due to Roar being the bigger signing of the two. So there's a number of teams out there that could use a new main tank, and if the quad DPS meta and heavy Winston play is going to come to fruition in stage number 2, Panker's value and stock across the board definitely rises up.
Yeah, I mean, where do you think? All right, Sleepy is probably going to be gone. He's very vocal about that. Or vocal with his displeasure. Where can you see him actually going?
I'm trying to think of all of the flex sports that are probably on the lower end. I mean, Washington would probably get the most benefit, I feel like, in regards to that. I mean, Guido's been doing okay, but he hasn't necessarily been a standout.
Same with I was thinking maybe Hagapen from Mayhem, like replacing him.
He's been serviceable.
But like, there's so many good Zenyatas out there, flex supports, that it's hard to be like, okay, this is a definite, like, they need this.
Yeah, absolutely. And with just how many fraggers there are in the league, too, it definitely kind of skews our perspective of how we are ranking, where the Zenyatas are across the board. I mean, the Outlaws are a curious case, too, with that role, but, like, I feel like when it comes to talking about, like, the viability of Ruckus compared to some of these other kind of, like, low-tier Zenyatta players, Ruckus does seem to come out ahead in most situations. But, like, KO is another one that has been putting up the best numbers for the Hunters. The Atlanta Reign, I feel like, even with their split, are pretty fine with who they have. So I don't think between Dogman and Kodak that they can't necessarily fit a good spot for that flex support. So really, like, Mayhem and Justice would make the most sense for people that would be buying for that specific role.
Yeah, and like it definitely, some teams kind of handcuff themselves, with having Paris being an all-European team or having all-Korean teams. You can't take on Sleepy, who is, an American player, and introduce him to this team because it's not what they're looking for. Like, you want to find some people that, Paris needs to sign to improve their team. Well, if they want to stick with the all-European roster, that limits it dramatically. And that's why, like I said, Fusions to them was a smart move, because Fusions, from England, makes sense. Even Calyx from Boston over to Paris wouldn't be the end of the world. But, I mean, they have Cruz over there, so I don't know if that will actually work.
The only other trade that I would like to see, based on how good this team is at development talent, and then on the other side, what the team actually needs is a potential trade between the Titans and the Dynasty, where Titans would trade Solomon Sue for Fitz. I feel like Fitz, when you look back at the Dynasty's performance when it comes to running that B squad, which we'll definitely be talking about here in a bit when we talk about the Sage Plus, Fitz has been doing fairly solid, and Solomon Sue obviously kind of came into his own again with a broken thumb, mind you, and just was outright silent on people. But Runaway just has this habit of cultivating talent, and I feel like someone that is as young as Fitz and has shown a lot of promise as someone that hasn't really necessarily had the amount of work being put in at that contenders level, that Runaway's mentality and just the way that they build that roster can really elevate his game to that next level. Because when you look at the other side, Dynasty have constantly been just trying to find that duo partner for Fleta. And
yeah, I mean, Titans are a nice trade for them, but you can't rule out the Spark either. Because the Spark are flush with DPS characters, but they need, flex tanks, stuff like that. So maybe fits into that. And you trade for somebody like Bazzi or, even maybe Crystal. I don't think they'll trade Godspeed. But maybe something like that could work out for them too. I don't know, like Spark need to do something as well. So maybe they could be trade partners. Who knows?
Absolutely. Well, we'll see whether or not we see any sort of movements here in the upcoming weeks, but trade options are definitely there at this point. But let's go ahead and see what's going on inside the Overwatch League, as there's quite a bit going on, obviously, because of Sage Playoffs wrapping up. So first up, we do know that the Philadelphia Fusion unveiled, along with Comcast Spectacor, they unveiled plans to build a $50 million stadium, which is going to be called the Fusion Arena. I mean, that's pretty obvious. So the stadium obviously is going to serve as a home for the Philadelphia Fusion, and they described it as the first ground-up, purpose-built esports arena in the Western Hemisphere. So this arena is going to be based in the Philadelphia Sports Complex and seat up to 3,500 fans, and also provide training space for the Philadelphia Fusion, with construction being set to begin this summer. So by the looks of it, it's not going to be open for season 3. So this is, future plans. But I have to say, not all of these teams are going to have Comcast money. We're not going to see everyone being like, yeah, I'm just going to throw down $50 million, build a new arena. But the thing that gets me is how many people are like, really? You're just building this for esports? Like, there's not going to be another purpose for this arena outside of just the Overwatch League. Of course, they're going to be doing different stuff there. I don't know why people have that jaded perspective when it comes to this, but it's just because they labeled it as an esports arena that they're like, oh, well, it must only be good for this.
Yeah, and what people aren't truly realizing, it's part of the Philadelphia Sports Complex, which is Citizen Banks Park, where the Phillies play. They're building like a mecca for all, football, baseball, esports, stuff like that, all right there. And they're building it up, and, that is what they're kind of... There are a lot of towns doing this. Like in Green Bay, I know they're doing it. And Milwaukee, with the new arena in Milwaukee, they're doing it too, where they're building an arena, but then they're also building everything up around it to revolve around the sports complexes and stuff like that. So, yes, the Fusion Stadium will be surrounded by Citizens Bank Park, Lincoln Financial Field, and the Wells Fargo Center. So it's going to be the 76ers, the Eagles, the Phillies, and the Fusion, all around each other. And there's going to be hotels, restaurants, all sorts of things. So there's going to be people there year-round. And yes, they said this is going to be the home of the Fusion, but it will also be the home of esports events. Like, not just Overwatch, because it'd be stupid. It would legit be stupid if they just made an Overwatch League only arena. It's going to hold smaller concerts. Like, not all good concerts, big concerts, need a 20,000 seat arena. Sometimes a 3,500 seat arena is perfectly fine. Other League of Legends events, Fortnite esports sucks. Apex, other things like that. It could be held here, and it's in the perfect location because they have massive amount of parking. They have massive hotels, restaurants, stuff like that. Another thing, as odd as this sounds, and I only say this because I am a NFL draft super nerd, is this would be the perfect location for the NFL draft. Because like what they're doing now with the NFL draft is they have the smaller arena where they actually hold the draft, invite limited fans in, but then outside the draft they have all these like fan festivals, and it's pretty massive. It was in Chicago, I think, last year, and they had 200,000 people show up for it. Well, you have the draft in the Fusion, complex, and then you have all the events around it by Citizens Bank Park, Lincoln Financial, stuff like that. So this is going to get a lot of use. Now, do I think everyone's going to build from the ground up like this? No. Do I think some will? Yes. Especially in certain areas, I think it makes the most sense. For Boston Uprising, I think, yes, it makes sense for them to build something like that. New York, probably not. Over in China and Korea, probably not, because there's already existing places over there. Dallas, probably not. Houston, probably not. LA, obviously. San Francisco might have to. So we just don't know who's going to build one. Philadelphia, though, is a good, and looking at this thing, it's super impressive. Like, you just look at it and you're like, okay, this is actually pretty awesome. Like, because that's where the practice area is going to be, the headquarters will be, yeah. It's going to be pretty impressive to see it once it's all done, especially fitting 3,500 people in it. I'm excited, very excited to see what comes from this. So we'll keep an eye on it and see who else decides to do stuff like this.
I'd love to see maybe Fusion Uni having a couple of games there as well, or just even doing like a huge watch party for Fusion University games, as well as they continue to win every single game in Contenders NA history, like they do, and I know when other team seems to be able to do. But definitely something to keep an eye on, and we'll see what awesome features that stadium is going to bring once construction is finalized. But moving on, speaking of the Overwatch League, we do have details for the All-Star weekend, or midweek. It's not even a weekend. I don't even know why I say that. It's like Wednesday and Thursday. Whatever. Besides the point. But we have the dates. We got ticket availability, voting opening for the 2019 All-Stars. So the All-Star festivities kicks off on May 15th with custom games between the Atlantic and Pacific All-Stars, with the division squads competing in the official All-Star game on May 16th. Now, tickets are available now on AXS.com. So we'll have the custom matches airing on ESPN2. The All-Star game will be airing on ESPN News. So as of right now, you can pick 6 stardom players to represent each division. So in order to cast your vote, all you gotta do is log into your Battle.net account, build your rosters, and it's important to note that with this, you must have 2 players at each role. So you need 2 supports, 2 tanks, 2 DPS, with voting ending on April 28th. Now, when are we going to hear about what the rosters are going to be? Well, we'll have starting rosters announced in early May. We're also going to have 12 reserves for each team. So we'll have, an additional 24 players added, which will be selected by Overwatch League players, coaches, casters, league officials, and those reserves are going to be announced mid-May. But it's interesting. Like they kind of like set some eligibility when it comes to being an all-star, where you need to have played at least 10 maps during the regular season to be eligible. And then if you're on the 2018 All-Stars, you are automatically eligible to be voted into this year's All-Star game. Now, I have to say, Ed, looking at the tanks and supports, not that big of an issue, right? Because we've been seeing a lot of that, right? But DPS, it's like, who do I pick here? Do I just base people off of their Zarya play? Do I just base it off of what we think is going to be the meta? Have you already cast your votes for the All-Star game?
I have not. And I'm looking at the leaderboards right now, and I'm ashamed of Overwatch League fans. Do you know who's on the leaderboard?
I do not. I do not have the page up.
So for the Atlantic Division, for support, JJoNak is one of the supports. Take a guess who the other is. I'll give you a hint. He didn't play Stage 1 and just got traded.
Arc?
Yep. So Arc and JJoNak are your two supports. Okay. Defran Carpet. I can totally see that. Fusions and Poco. I can even see that. For Pacific, you have Raije, Hong, and Fleta. I can see that. Guxue getting the votes from China. Right on. There's 3 players from the Hunters. So you have Amen. I can see that. Jinmu. I can even see that. Veltal from the Chengdu Hunkers is the other support player. Okay, people. So let's look at this. The championship game had the Vancouver Titans. Nobody voted into the starting lineups. Also had the San Francisco Shock. None of them voted into the starting lineup.
This is a key example of why we don't look at Chinese viewership and also shouldn't count their votes. Yeah. Biased.
So, I mean, all right, fine, fun and dandy. It's all for fun. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm going to vote for the actual best players and not, be a homer on it. Because if I did, it'd be like, hey, Crystal, IDK, Guxue, Rio, they're all making the All-Star game. Because I have decided to fully back the Hanzo Spark for the rest of the season. And, it's just fun. I like how it's going to be on ESPN2. So we'll actually get some national viewership that way. I really hope they bring back a lot of what they had last time. And the Widowmaker duel, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Which they should, but I hope they add new things and get rid of some of the stuff that sucked. So, the caster showdown was cheeky and fun. I'm good without that. I'm not tuning in to see the casters play each other. That's fine for preseason. You don't tune into the All-Star game to see non-Overwatch League players play. What they should do, honestly, which would be huge, is they should have a features game where they get 6-on-6 from contenders. You pick 6 players from contenders, Western Hemisphere and 6 from Eastern Hemisphere, something like that, and you bring them in and you have them play on stage. That would be a lot of fun because that would introduce people to a lot of the unknown players. Also, side note, my birthday is May 16th, and the All-Star game ends on May 16th. So that's actually kind of awesome.
I mean, I'm not sending you to the All-Star game.
No. I'm not expecting you to send me to the All-Star game, but I'm expecting each and every one of our listeners to send me a birthday present.
Oh, okay.
Every single one of you. So, but no, it's, have you cast your ballot yet?
You know what? I'm pretty sure I did. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
This is gonna be awesome because I'm gonna leave my mic on as I bring up the website. Yeah, I know. I'm pretty sure I sent mine in. Let me just pull it up really quick when I go to the website, and it should tell me if I did or not. Of course, it's telling me to log in, even though I should already be logged in. Okay. I don't know if it actually took mine. Because it's not actually showing.
Weird.
Yeah, like I'm logged in and I'm on that site, but
maybe
it just
you
tells
can
me
vote a certain number of times.
now it says thanks for voting, but it doesn't actually tell me who I picked.
Oh.
Well, anyways, I'll recast my votes on one of my other accounts, and we'll talk about that later. But I do know for a fact that I did vote for Min Soo for DPS, just because I know he's gonna keep popping off. I mean, if the McCree is any indicator with the stage playoffs, I'm sure he's gonna, continue to do great things in stage number 2. But that is a point for another day. Let's go ahead and talk about the stage 1 playoffs. There's a lot of good stuff to talk about. So first off, let's talk about the bracket shattering upset that we saw in the round of 8 when the hashtag Soulmates, the Seoul Dynasty, basically threw a wrench in everyone's plans by toppling the previously undefeated New York Excelsior, which really caught everyone by surprise. So, just to catch everyone up to speed at this point, basically, Dynasty, they lost a tiebreaker against the Shock 3-0. And then, because of that, they had to face NYXL. And in order for the Dynasty to make the playoffs, they had to beat London Spitfire, a team they have never beaten. And then to advance in the playoffs, they had to do the same thing because they have also not beaten NYXL. So how did the Dynasty do it? Well, they come out on control, running their, we'll do the air quotes just like we did on OWLN, the B squad, right? And they ended up taking the control map 2 rounds to 0, and it just all kind of spiraled out of control from there. So you had Fitz dominated the opening map alongside Marvel, and a lot of this was just the Dynasty pressuring JJoNak. JJoNak was under a lot of stress, and it's so weird to see him being the target. Normally, they might be trying to pressure the front line. No, they went straight to JJoNak, and JJoNak was dying early and often. And it looked like Dynasty were going to pull off the sweep, but then Mekko basically noped and just had a really heroic self-destruct in the last moments of a multiple round Volskaya attack that kept NYXL in the match. But at the end of the day, Michelle's Sombra was the undoing of the New York Excelsior. And I remember, we had that all-in moment by Nene on Rialto when he looked to solo grab Michelle, which did not land. And then Dynasty ended up taking that map and the series win. But it's just like one of those things. When it happened, I was like, well, shit. Like, I was so worried that I was like, oh, great. Here we go. We had to face London. Now we have to face MXL. And then if we win, chances are, whatever percentage I gave that, I was like, crap. Then my dads are going to have to fight because then we'd have to face Vancouver. We'd have to run the Korean Gauntlet. And it just kept piling up. But it was just one of those moments where I didn't really give Dynasty a chance in that series just due to the previous track record. Despite lightning striking once against London Spitfire, did not expect the same result against NYXL. And we did not get the finals that so many of us expected, but it turned out to be like one of the greatest moments of Stage Plus that we have seen in the Overwatch League since the inaugural season. So nothing to be ashamed of with the end result. And honestly, the finals that we got far exceeded my expectations, despite what quality of match I was expecting going in, because both of these teams, the Titans and the Shock, had similar trajectories in order to advance to the grand final. So it was just a crazy set of circumstances. And for the Dynasty, I mean, you had to be very happy with how you performed. Even in the semifinals, sure, they got 4-0'd by the Titans, but they were completing every map that they were playing, which cannot be said about a lot of the other teams that the Titans kind of swept under the rug at that point.
Yeah, like the Seoul, the Seoul, New York map. When we were watching that, like me, you, and Spider were talking a lot of me and you talking back and forth. And we're like, no, 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 no. What? No, they're not up to nothing. Um, and then when we got to Rialto, we're like, okay, New York's probably going to pull this one off. They're coming in. They got the ult advantage. They're going to finish the map. And then, like you said, Nene. All right. Anyone who knocks Nene, yes, he didn't hit the grab on Sombra. But it was the play that would have won them the map. Like, he catches Sombra in there. New York wins the map, and it's tied 2 apiece. And then who knows what happens in map 5. So that was, he went for it all. It just didn't hit. Michelle, like you said, was the all-star. Michelle proved that he was the best GOATS Sombra in the league this year. Like, a lot of people had speculated RCK, and no, it's not. It was Michelle. So it was a great map. And, like, as far as the B team goes, one thing I kind of hope they stick with is what we thought we were going to be getting from the London Spitfire last year in regards to having 2 teams, like 2 separate teams for different maps. So, like, when you have control maps, you bring in what is called the B team, Marvel, Fitz, Zumba, stuff like that. Like, bring them in to do the control maps because that is what they're best on. Then you bring in, Fissure, Michelle, Munchkin in on the rest of the maps. And then you run that way, and it makes it that much harder for the other team to try and watch videos on you, gameplay against you. So that was great. The semifinals were crap. 4-0s by the Titans and Shock, so not even going over that, except the Fusion looked really bad. But the actual championship game was something. It was probably the best match. It's the best match we've seen this year. It's up there with the best matches we've seen ever. I think the reason it might not take the top is that map 7 on Rialto was just a ruffle stump. Like, that was just an ugly, ugly map. Vancouver set the record for the fastest map time by a minute. Like, okay. Like, Vancouver did a great job. So if you watch the Shock throughout the playoffs, you noticed a couple of things, but one of the most important is Sinatraa and his grab usage. He uses his grab much differently than a lot of other Zaryas actually do. He is not afraid to, okay, I know if we just get 1 kill, we're going to win this fight. So I'm going to get the one person, kill the one person, and then they're down, and then the fight starts over. And that's what he was doing throughout the whole thing up until the finals. He was grabbing, the baguettes. He was grabbing just the Zaryas or grabbing whoever he could get his hands on and winning team fights that way. And Vancouver took advantage of that and didn't allow him to do that. Like, Sinatraa was not able to play the way he normally plays. Violet for the San Francisco Shock had very bad ult management throughout the entire 7-game series, like he has had throughout all of stage 1. Like, Shock put up great contests, but they were definitely outplayed, I think, in the whole series. 7 maps. Like, they came out ahead on 3 of the maps, but in my mind, Vancouver outplayed them. I will say one of the interesting stats from this is whoever picked the map, except for the last map, won. So, and obviously the first map, since that's random. But, like, every time a team picked a map, they won. And then the other team would pick, they would win, and so on and so forth. And that's just good coaching right there. Bumper as so much fun Bumper is to watch, he is a massive liability for that team. He just is. Like, he's super fun to watch. He's super good. But he is also the person where if you told me he cost the team a playoff spot because of his stupid bonehead plays, I would not be surprised at all. And I don't know, like, at a certain point, that doesn't work in the Overwatch League. You're going to get punished for stuff like that. And teams are going to become wise to that. And then when does Bumper become replaceable at that point?
Well, the thing about Bumper is, yes, he plays very aggro, but the reason he can play so aggro is due to the fact that you have Haxel on Brigida, who is right there with him, which enables him that much further. So it's a lot harder to punish him just due to that extra backup that he does have. But the really crazy thing about the Stage 1 finals was when we got to Ilios, which was one of the maps that the Shock picked. And that was one of the maps that the Titans were currently undefeated on. They were 5-0 this stage. And the Shock ended up taking that map. And that was kind of like the moment where I was thinking, okay, this is definitely one of those moments that can shift the momentum. But that did not actually happen. But it was really interesting to see how both of these teams that made it to the finals didn't drop a single map leading up to that point. We have the full distance, which we're kind of used to seeing from a team like the Titans in contenders, because they're kind of known for these very grueling series, just like when Runaway faced Condu Panthera in the Apex finals this past season. But at the end of the day, we had two Reinhardts who, on one side for the Shock, we haven't necessarily been the most confident in Super as a main tank, but the way that the Shock work around him really elevates his style of play. And his numbers have been really good across the league. And then you have Bumper, who plays so aggro that, he just tends to get more eliminations, more damage. But early on, Super was definitely winning the stun competition. So basically, Sominsu would come in and throw a Graviton Surge. It would land. Graviton Surges kept landing time and time again. There wasn't a lot of grabs being eaten by the D.Va players on either side. But Super would just be like, yeah, that's nice. I'm just going to Earth Shatter your entire team. And then there wouldn't be any follow-up for Titans and their Graviton Surge. So it's not something that we're used to seeing all the time, but it worked perfectly and just nullified a crucial ultimate. But you can look at the numbers, and at points, Super was almost 2-1 in favor of landing the Earthshatter stuns. That being said, though, just because it was used to nullify another ultimate, they didn't necessarily always convert on the eliminations from those stuns. But this was really, at the end of the day, a game of inches. When you look at the Reinhardt stats, when you look at the Zarya stats, there might only been like a couple of hundred damage differential. Same with the time that it took to gain the ultimate. It was only a couple of seconds apart. And the Zenyatta players were really neck and neck. You couldn't have asked for a closer series. And I really feel like Haxel's Brigida was kind of the glue behind the Titans' performance, because there were a lot of moments where you would see Moth try to drop a sound barrier, and he would get shield bash as he was about to hit the ground, and he'd get stunned up, and then he'd die, so the beat was never dropped. And it's just key plays like that we're not used to seeing from these Brigida players, because I know a lot of people just look at Brig and just be like, oh, it's just hold W and hold M1. No, like, if you want to see a really good Brigida player and you want to see that point of view, Haxel is the person to be looking at, because he's been doing stuff that we just don't normally get to see out of that role in particular. And he was just leaps and bounds better than his counterpart for the Shock.
Yeah, and one thing I learned, and it's not something that we really keep an eye on when we're watching Overwatch League live. I was watching and I highly recommend everyone go out there and watch it, is go to Jane's YouTube videos. Jane Arrow, so the head coach and assistant coach, And then halfway through, Siegel joins them. And they do like live commentary on the match. And the amount of praise they give both Moth and Slime, so the two Lucio players, is kind of insane. Like at one point they even talked to all right, we have like two of the top 3 Lucio players in the league right now, because they both said Closer was the number 1 Lucio player in the league. Well, of course, he's on your team. But the Lucio play is not something that gets glorified or you see all that much, because, and they put it best, you don't see when Lucio boops someone into a death. That is getting changed or is live right now with the new patch. But you don't see that on the kill feed or anything like that, so you have to keep an eye on it. But that is something that they were doing really well throughout that entire match, is booping people or knocking people back into their own deaths. So that is something, if you go back, watch that, keep an eye on them, or just watch Jane and Arrow's stream, and and they definitely talk about it. So definitely go do that. Custa also has one. Mm-hmm. I think that's out there. And then I think Elk put one out today. You're seeing a lot of these players do like these commentary of the championship game, because I think Overwatch League is getting smart and allowing like its players to, publicly stream that kind of stuff. So smart move on the Overwatch League.
Absolutely. So with stage 1 officially wrapping up and Titans, just styling on all the haters out there who, were like, oh, Runaway are so overhyped, rolling their eyes. Well, look what happened. Things happened. And they're the stage 1 champions, which is funny because leading into the season, we're like, okay, like we have high expectations. Both of us thought, hey, like we've seen this kind of play out in the inaugural season with NYXL in London. London picked up 2 rosters. They go on, takes the stage 1 title. NYXL also did very good stage 1 last year. Same could be said this year until they got, to the playoffs. But it's funny how the inaugural season and season 2 has kind of mirrored one another already, where you're seeing similar storylines play out even on different teams, which is great to see. So I was not surprised to see Titans come out ahead. And, with NYXL dropping early on, that basically, if anything was going to happen to be like a disappointment, it would have been if Titans lost. That really would have thrown things further into a loop or in disarray, however you want to describe it. So at least the Titans, with the other heavy favorite out of the picture, were able to come out on top of stage 1 overall, and you couldn't have asked for a better stage from them. But taking a look back and reflecting on stage 1 as a whole, there's a couple of ways that we can do this. So were there any like key storylines that you enjoyed following the most when it comes to stage 1 across the board, whether it's team specific or player specific, anything like that?
I think the biggest thing for me from storyline perspective is Chengdu Hunters. That was probably the most fun storyline, and I guess it's not really a storyline, but more the team that is the anti-meta team. That is, we're going to run what we want, and it's going to be successful. And they're the most fun team to watch in stage 1. That's why 3 of their players are voted in to be number 1 in the playoffs, is because, yes, they're from China, but so is Guangzhou Charge. You don't see it full of Guangzhou. The Hunters are just a fun team. So that was a really good story to watch. The other one is obviously the Shanghai Dragons. They got their win. They're middle of the road team. So it was interesting to see those stories kind of pan out throughout the stage. Zachary's battle in Brig Jail. the most vocal anti-Brig player in the Overwatch League, playing Brig on every map. So that was pretty fun to watch. So I don't know, what are some of your favorite storylines from Stage 1?
If I'm looking at player specific, I'm looking at the usage of Wrecking Ball by Amen, because really no one else was doing that outside of like the initial week with Shanghai Dragons not having an actual main tank at the time. So it's really interesting to see Hunters basically come into the league and saying, you know what, we know there's this meta, but no, that's not really our style. And then, you know, later on it kind of evolved to be like, yeah, you know, we could run quad DPS, right? But we could also play 3-3, and then it kind of threw some teams in disarray, which was cool to see, because you're so accustomed to seeing them run a very specific thing that is hard to prepare for, and then they just switch it up on you. So it kind of like keeps you on a back foot. For me, it's obviously, you know, a team, like a tale of two teams for me, because, you know, obviously I followed Untakai and Runaway leading into the Overwatch League. And after the bust that was Dynasty Season 1, to see them come in and be able to put themselves into a position to actually make the stage playoffs was absolutely monumental for me. And then really Titans just living up to their namesake was expected, but it definitely made me smile knowing like, hey, like I know there's been a lot of naysayers and a lot of like copy passes about, you know, Runaway not being Overwatch League ready, and then they just come in and 7-0 and have that swagger, especially with Bumper saying like, yeah, we're just gonna 4-0 everyone. Didn't happen, but hey, you know, it brings that animosity and it gives them that extra dimension, because not a lot of the teams are actually willing to trash talk, but the Titans are one of them, which I absolutely love to see. And really outside of that, another one is just the difference that we've seen from the LA teams was another one. I'm not going to say like it was the best storyline to follow from an entertainment perspective, but I was really curious to see how the Gladiators were going to fare, or what they were going to do when DK turned 18. Like, we didn't know if he was just going to be handcuffed to Surefour, if they were going to be working together, what that situation was going to be. But the K definitely impressed early on. And then it's just kind of left us wondering, like, well, what's Surefour going to be up to? So hopefully we have some answers for Surefour here if we do see a meta shift. And really, the Valiant going from one of the top teams in Stage 4 Season 1 to absolute bottom team in regards to record in Stage 1 of Season 2 was just crazy to me. And, you know, you can look at all the issues that the Valiant had, whether it was Kareev's bubble management, Iziaki's Transcendence usage, them not playing Custa, Fate just not getting enough protection, or just, you know, getting too far ahead of his team. There were so many issues with the Valiant. And hopefully, with a meta shift, the Valiant are actually going to look like the team that we expected them to be, and not being kind of like a team that has the same amount of map wins as like the Justice, who really struggled, or even Paris. Like, what the heck? I have no idea what's going to happen with Paris, just based on the fact that Stage 1 played out completely different than what we were expecting. So at this point, it just seems to be like, we're just going to throw darts at the balloons, and hopefully, you know, something's going to pop. Whether it's soon or one of their other DPS, I don't know. But that team really seems to be in disarray right now.
Now, I guess, follow up to all those storylines. What storylines are you most interested in seeing for Stage 2 then?
The big thing to me is okay, this is going to like lead into something that you were talking about with the Chinese expansion teams. So the Charge, the Hunters, and to an extent, the Dragons were running DPS heavy compositions. Now, in a meta that was 3-3, those sort of compositions directly counter the 3-3. Where, you know, you're pressuring someone into a room, you're hitting a lot of like Pharaoh rockets, You have a lot of splash damage. You get a pick, and then it just steamrolls from that point. It's really good at just opening the space that you need and just taking away the positional advantage of the triple tank, triple support. I really am curious to see how those teams are going to fare now that chances are they're going to be seeing similar compositions to what they're actually running and seeing whether the effectiveness of those compositions is going to dissipate just because they're going to be running up against hit scan players. We're going to be seeing a rise of Widowmaker, McCree, Soldier 76 against like Jinmu's Pharah. So I want to see like how he's going to do once he has a direct counter rather than just kind of not having anyone pressuring him at all. So for me, that's going to be like the key thing. Because you look at the strength of schedule, and Chengdu Hunters have a very easy schedule in stage number 2. They have a really good chance of making the stage playoffs, but if the other teams are basically going to be able to match what they're doing, then that's definitely a reason to be concerned, because they're not going to have as many opportunities presented to them as they would against triple tank, triple support.
Yeah, I think I'm honestly, and this is a little bit biased for me, I'm a little excited to see what the Spark can do next stage, to see, because they did not really strike me as a team that is GOATS focused. They're not one of the GOATS teams, but they weren't like, hey, we're just going to run DPS. It was more like, we're going to try and play GOATS and see how we can do. Stage 2 for them is going to be brutal. Like, brutal. So I know they play Vancouver, San Francisco, the Charge, the Hunters, Paris Eternal, and Seoul Dynasty. That's a rough schedule. Like, the Paris Eternal are probably the worst team that they're playing. And everyone above them is probably going to be an above 500 team for stage 2. So, like, they have a brutal schedule. I'm interested to see that. I'm interested to see the Decay Sureforce situation. Because I either play Sureforce or trade him. He's so good. But Decay's just better. I hate to say it, but Decay's better than Sureforce. But Sureforce deserves to start on 90% of all the other teams that are out there. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. I also want to see how in-depth Seoul Dynasty get with their 2 squads. And see if they continue to run two squads, or if they go towards a more static, 6-person team. But yeah, as much as like we were both down on the China teams coming into the season, and now they're the most intriguing part of probably the Overwatch League, is how are the Charge and how are the Hunters and Dragons going to be doing in the stage? Like, everyone wants to know how the Hunters are going to do when other teams are playing DPS back at them. And it's going to be interesting because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the meta is going to be. If like Sinatra is to be believed, as watching his stream last night, if we're to believe Sinatra, it's going to be GOATS again. Like, if it's GOATS again, then we're just going to deal with the same old thing. But I think everyone's just hoping it's not going to be GOATS again. So, I don't know. That's what I'm looking forward to probably the most in stage 2.
Yeah, and another thing, too, is I am really anxious to see whether or not the level of parity is going to continue into stage 2. So looking back at stage 1, we had 5 teams that had a 4-3 record. Of course, Dallas being the sole team to actually not make the playoffs with that sort of record. Then we had 6 or 7 teams that were all 3-4. So I want to see if that's going to continue into each stage, or if maybe we're going to see like an even bigger gap between like the top teams in the league per stage as opposed to the bottom teams, at least with a cutoff point, because there are 8 teams overall. But you look back and if you're looking at the overall standings, if things do shift to a DPS meta, there are definitely some teams at the top of the pack that would greatly benefit from a DPS meta. That would include Titans, New York Excelsior, Fusion especially. Out of those 3 might actually have the most to gain from a DPS-centric meta. But if we do switch to either dive or quad DPS, when it comes to the Winston play, what are some of the teams out there that you feel like are going to excel, knowing that they have a main tank player that specializes in Winston over Reinhardt, which we saw time and time again in stage number 1?
All right, so just spitballing here. Well, Spark with Gushui. I think that's a big one. The Spitfire is another one that will really shine. New York probably will shine. Fusion, if they keep Sato in the tank spot, will shine. I think a lot of teams will fall off if Winston becomes starting to be a big thing. Like I said earlier, Boston will probably fall off a little. Dallas might fall off a little. Gladiators probably, if they don't put Panker in as main tank, if Winston's kind of everyone's jam. But yeah, like it's one of those things. Spitfire probably the most, with gesture. He's one of the best Winstons, but he's stuck on Reinhardt. So I think Spitfire will definitely come back. Can you think of other ones that I missed?
Well, here's the thing. Like, when you look across the board, most of the main tank players in a league tend to run Winston more than Reinhardt in the past. So it's very curious to kind of keep an eye on. I do feel like there are teams where it won't benefit as much. So, you're looking at probably Houston Outlaws with Muma. Paris tend to run Reinhardt a lot more than Winston, so I'm really worried about how they're going to fare in that particular meta. In Florida is just kind of, I don't know. They definitely need to shore up that main tank spot on that team, but I will say, like, I expect better things from Fate, from the LA Valiant going into stage 2, just because he's not solely going to have to rely on a Zarya player, so, there is that. So I'm expecting better things to come out of him. But outside of that, stage 2, we can see a number of things. But are there any heroes in particular that you would like to see being brought back into the meta that might give, select individuals maybe an edge over some of the competition? So, like, for example, going back to like the PTR Pro Pugs, we got to see Blase really popping off on the Doomfist. Like, are there any other hero and player combinations that you can think of that you would just really like to see to help elevate some of these teams out there?
I would like to see let's see. I would like to see Moira. I would like to see Moira get more play. Ryu Hong on Moira is always fun. You saw a little bit of Moira played, but not a whole lot. I would love to see that. I want to see more Doomfist. I'm one of the few that would love to see more Doomfist because, like, the things that you can pull off with Doomfist are just insane and super fun to watch. And it doesn't revolve, so it has nothing to do with his ultimate. Like, his ultimate actually is just a zoning thing. Like, you're not truly going to start massively killing people with Doomfist's ult. It's more of a zoning thing. I also really want to see Roadhog back in the mix of things. I don't know who I want to see on it. I just want to see it's from a spectator point of view, seeing those amazing hooks is just something fun to watch. And then Widowmaker. Like, who doesn't like seeing a good, like, no, like, 360, headshot on a Widowmaker? That'd be a lot of fun. I just want to see different characters, but I don't want to see cheese characters. I don't want to see the Symmetras. I don't want to see Torbjorns or Bastion. To me, those are cheese characters. I want to see high skill characters being played to their finest. Even like a McCree. Like, with the aiming required with the McCree is a thing of beauty to watch. Just trying to think of who else. Wrecking Ball would be fun, but it's just Wrecking Ball is fun to watch, but it's hard to follow on a live stream. Like, that type of tank is hard to follow. So that you don't ever see them using Amang's point of view. They use more of an overhead thing. I'm really bored with Far Mercy. That just bores the hell out of me. Like, especially when it's like Far Mercy versus Far Mercy. I'm like, this is the last thing I want to see is two Pharahs hoping to hit with 2 shots in a row against the other Pharah floating in midair. Tracer would be okay, but Tracer is very anticlimactic. Like, Tracer spends a lot of time doing poke damage, building up all poke damage. That's not as fun to watch. So, I don't know. I feel I listed half the characters. How about you? What heroes are you looking forward to the most to seeing possibly in Stage 2?
I mean, for me, it's primarily going to be Widowmaker, because that always leads to, like, the best like moments when it comes to broadcasts and just pop-off moments. So, getting to see the Bamboozles, you're seeing Surefour on Widow or Pine, Saya player, definitely leads to a lot more interest in duels. And, maybe that'll bring Linkzr back into the equation for Houston, which would be nice to see. Outside of that, Doomfist is a really curious one, because there are quite a few players that have a really good Doomfist. And if you're Boston, I mean, just looking at the hero pool that they have on that DPS line isn't the best. So if Doomfist becomes meta, that would be absolutely massive for them, just because not all the teams are going to be able to have an answer for that in particular. I feel like we'll probably still see quite a bit of Sombra play as well. Whether it's Sombra Goats or not remains to be seen, but I do hope that we see a lot more compositional switches going into Stage 2, and not just kind of seeing the same thing kind of play out throughout the entirety of the season. So, I'm just anxious to see, well, are any of these teams going to be playing Baptiste? Or since, people haven't really been practicing due to the playoffs, is that just going to be completely out the window in Stage 2? I don't know, but I would not be surprised to see a similar situation to what Dallas Fuel did with Brigitte when Brigitte was introduced, where you see a team running Baptiste 80% of the time throughout the stage, which is going to be like 40% more than any other team in the league. And if so, like, is that going to be from a hit scan player? Is it going to be someone who has played main support that we have seen flex over to Soldier 76, like Harry Hook for Dallas Fuel? I don't know, but it's definitely going to be one of these heroes that might be too abusable when it comes to line of sight, where chances are we might not see Baptiste because of that, because it's so easy to just disengage when it comes to that ultimate or the immortality field. I don't know, but it's just knowing that we have this patch now that's going to be live for the Overwatch League that changes 19 of the 30 heroes, so it's either going to change nothing or change everything. So who knows what it's going to be? I can't wait to find out.
All right, now, important question. Would you rather see Widowmaker or Ashe with Bob? Right? That's a tough one.
Honestly, we've seen better Widow player than we have Ashe play.
But we haven't really been able to see Ashe because Ashe has only been playable in the GOATS meta.
Okay, so if we're seeing double sniper, I fully expect it to be Ashe Widow and not Widow Hanzo. So if that's the case, like I feel like that's the best position where we're going to be seeing Ashe if Ashe is going to be more relevant.
I'd rather see Ashe than Widow. Just mainly not for actual Ashe. It's mainly for Bob.
For the Bob chance.
For the Bob. Like, it's mainly because I want to see Bob. And I want to see what teams do with Bob. So, if you were to pick one support to see, who would you pick that you want to see the majority of? If there was one, like, staple support player, who would it be?
Man, that is a loaded question. You know, I'm not going to say Baptiste because that's like a cop-out answer. I do expect to see a lot more Moira play, though. And the thing, too, is, like, not all the main supports have Moira in their wheelhouse. So, like, for players like Ryo Han, like Hip from Paris Eternal, I feel like that might give them an edge in the support meta. But I don't know if that's going to be enough to kind of, like, outweigh some of the other issues that we might be seeing on those teams. But if we're seeing a lot of quad DPS, I fully expect to see a lot more Mercy being played in Stage 2.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I expected you to say Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be the one hero that you're going to be extremely happy to not see?
Reaper.
Okay, so you didn't even go with one of the GOATS players.
No. So here's the thing. Regardless of what they've done to Reaper, every time we see Reaper getting pulled out, it's in a situation where it's not going to work, right? Like, it's just like banging your head on the wall. And I don't know if we'll see a situation outside of like Anubis defense point B where Reaper is going to be seeing like a ton of value. Like the GOATS composition or just the heroes that have been in the 3-3, I'm not expecting a lot of fall off. I mean, you're going to see some fall off, but it's not going to be drastic across the board when it comes to all 6 of those heroes. It's going to impact some more than others. For me, I just want to see what the pick rate adjustment is going to be for Zenyatta just due to the Discord orb debuff being not as potent now. So I think that's going to be the one that I'm going to be keeping my eye on the closest, just because that one impacts virtually every aspect of the game.
All right, I think that's all I got for you for what you're looking forward to in Stage 2.
But outside of that, though, I just want to see more DPS being in play, because 1, that's going to make for more clippable moments in the Overwatch League. 2, it's going to definitely change the dynamic of certain teams out there. And 3, you know, it's definitely going to shake things up in Fantasy Overwatch League based on how some of us drafted. Which I need in some leagues more than others. So definitely a lot to be excited for, and I cannot wait for Stage 2 to get underway. We'll see how things evolve and who turns around their season and who just free falls with a meta shift. So definitely a lot to keep an eye on, but definitely keep an eye out for, you know, the all-star voting. You know, go cast your votes. Make sure you do that. Maybe we can squeeze some of the Hunters players out of the starting lineup because there's no reason.
Keep Jinmu in.
Jinmu's the exception. Okay, here's the thing. A vote for Jinmu is a vote for an actual DPS player. He at least played DPS in Stage 1. Not most of these other, you know, DPS players that people are going to be voting for who were like on Zarya primarily. Don't do that. Vote with your head, not your heart.
Vote Jinmu.
Vote Jinmu.
Vote Jinmu.
Absolutely.
2019.
Mm-hmm. But with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and wrap the show up. So one of the ways to help us out, one of the best ways to do that is to go leave us a review over on iTunes. We're always looking for insight on how we can make for a better listening experience for you guys. If you'd like to find additional Overwatch content, be sure to check out Overwatch Recall, which is our listen of Overwatch, Overwatch League, Path to Pro, Fantasy Overwatch League podcast over on our website. Then every Sunday we release the episodic list-in, so be sure to find Overwatch Recall on Twitter at OW Recall. And let's see, today's Wednesday, so yesterday on my day off, I sat down with the host of Casual Overwatch League Fans. So that's a newer startup podcast that recently started. I think they're like 5 episodes in at this point. So we sat down for like a little bit over an hour. So be sure to check out that interview on the Overwatch Recall feed. So thank you again to Alluremore and Howler for, taking some time out to talk to me about their passion project when it comes to the Overwatch League. If you guys would like to, support us additionally, more so than you already do, well, we do have a Patreon page, and we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. So be sure to check that out at patreon.com/OWL Network. And of course, you too can join the likes of some of our Master and Grandmaster patrons and get a shout out every episode. But Ed, we have a plethora, number of ways how our listeners and viewers can get a hold of us. Why don't you let them know how they can do that?
All right. Well, they can reach us through email at hndoverwatch@gmail.com. You can reach us on Twitter over at Twitter at hndoverwatch. We do have a website, and that is www.owlnshow.com. We are on YouTube, youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. So come over there, see the videos that Spider's putting up, as long as our weekly power rankings. Outside this week, because there's no Overwatch League this week. We are on Discord, so come on, join us on Discord at discord.me/OWLNshow. We are streaming presently live on Twitch, so at twitch.tv/OWLNshow. We are a Twitch affiliate to help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. We do stream pretty regularly, so on Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific, we have the Overwatch League Network. On Tuesdays, outside of this week, because it's a bye week, we have our Fantasy Overwatch League show, OWL by the Numbers, at 6 p.m. Pacific. On Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, we have this show, Heroes Never Die. And then host streams will very rarely be on Thursdays, Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific because, the Overwatch League is on, and we want to watch that. Totem, actually already mentioned our Patreon, so come over to patreon.com/OWL Network. So you can join us for starting at just $1 a day, or $1 a month. $1 a day, yes. $1 a day. Please come join us for that. No, for $1 a month and higher, you too can join the likes of Blazing Bob, Brendan, and Gabby in helping our network grow. So thanks again for all the support. You can reach me personally on Twitter at Edanar, EDANAR Overwatch. Totem, where can they find you?
Well, I'm over on Twitter at TotallyDrunkCTR. But with that being said, guys, I do want to thank you again for hanging out with us tonight on Twitch, and thank all of our repeat listeners out there. And just as a quick note for other podcasters out there, if you use discord.me, they recently relaunched their website. So any existing URL is currently inactive through them. Now, they kept the URLs, but right now it redirects to a 404 page error. So you have to go to their website and resubmit your link in order for it to continue to, do the instant invite. So just a heads up in case you guys missed that, because I know they launched their new website. I believe it was on Monday or Tuesday when I noticed it. So definitely go check that out, because as of right now, if you're using discord.me and you didn't resubmit, can't use that link. So keep an eye out for that. And of course, we did have Ramses on Watchpoint Radio last night, so go check that out as well. But with that being said, guys, again, you've been listening to Heroes Never Die. This has been episode 153. I have been your host, Totally Drunk, joined by my co-host, Edanar, and we hope to see you guys back next week. Have a good night.